What's up, y'all? I know you might be thinking that this is not really the content that I usually make. Well, this is your fault because I spent freaking uh, dang near 50 hours making that Francis Ngannou video, and you guys barely got it to 70 views.
Bruh.
You know what I had to do? I had to sit through all of Derek Lewis versus Francis Ngannou for one freaking left hook clip to make that video. So now you guys are getting low effort videos from me from now on because I'm not sitting there. I have a good feeling about making this type of content. So let's crack this one. Claudio Puelles, go away. This guy is a disgrace. I mean, you were given the opportunity of a lifetime to fight Dan Hooker after beating, who did you even beat? Nobody of worth, right? Your biggest win before this was Clay Guida with a knee bar. All you did was just roll around like a roly-poly. I mean, at least Ryan Hall broke his hand trying to throw a punch before he resorted to doing this clown stuff. But ridiculous. Go back to your commentary job and never fight again. Coming in at number 7 is Mateusz Gamrot. Mateusz is the first fighter out of the new wave who got an ability to test himself against the elite in his last fight against Beneil. Now, I'm not going to count Fiziev's fight against RDA, mostly because of the fact that RDA's ranking was gained by him fighting Paul Felder, who came in on very short notice to a 5-round fight, and then maintaining it against Renato Moicano, who is very, very good and will make an appearance later on in this list, but he was unranked, and he also came in on something short, like a 1-week camp, to fight in a 5-round fight. Now, Gamrot didn't get absolutely dominated and showed that he can hang with those at the top of the division, but Beneil showed Mateusz that he's not quite there yet, and on account of his age, might never be. Now, Mateusz's grappling is really, really good, but it has been shown to be difficult to impose on the guys of his generation like Arman and Guram, aside from Arman slowing down in the 5th round, and his striking has been recently exposed as just being an awkward switch hitter. His experience in high-profile positions, coming in as a double champ in KSW, beating the likes of Mansour Barnoui, has given him that extra edge in close fights. That being said, I think that he loses to everybody above him, save for maybe Justin Gaethje or Dustin Poirier, but I believe he mops up nearly everybody else ranked below him, especially guys like Hooker, Turner, RDA, Tony Ferguson, and although I don't know, some of those fights with Damir could be competitive. Wait, Damir lost that fight against Arman based off his wrestling, and I think that Arman actually beat him, but hey, any given Saturday. Okay, Justin Gaethje is in at number 6. This may seem like a bit of a whack take here, but I promise you my rationale will hold up. Yes, he's only lost twice to champions in his last 7 fights, but the ways that he lost doesn't bode well for him considering the types of fighters that are coming up, who all seem to have really good striking, coupled with great grappling skills. We haven't seen any of these fighters on the come up get lured into brawls and abandon their technical bases, and Justin's almost non-existent defensive grappling, or jiu-jitsu, leaves a lot to be desired. Yes, he beat Michael Chandler, who is higher than him on this list, but I think that if you watch that fight, I believe Michael Chandler, who doesn't fight like an idiot in the 3rd round and sticks to a clean, technical game plan, would have absolutely beat him. Justin also doesn't seem to have the type of power that everybody attributes to him given his highlight reel. But if you look at it, in his UFC run, he hasn't put anybody clean out other than James Vick, who is a legitimate knocked out artist, or Edson Barboza, who got poked in the eye and was circling into the side where he didn't have clear vision. These fighters are capable of countering or checking his leg kicks, as you can see with Charles Oliveira, who used that to get into the clinch, and are more than capable of threatening the grappling game. Fighters like Fiziev and Arman would also have the speed advantage over Gaethje, and with their precision, on top of Gaethje's willingness to brawl, would lead to Gaethje losing those matchups. Another very hard matchup for him, I think, would be Damir Ismagulov. Yes, he just lost to Arman, but that was because of his grappling, and I just don't see Gaethje trying to impose an offensive wrestling game plan on somebody who's just going to jab him up and will probably be able to defend his takedowns. Coming in at number 1 is Charles Oliveira.
Bring out the olive!
It's always tough when you see a fighter put their all into something and then get their game completely nullified. In the lead up to UFC 280, people were touting Charles as the nightmare matchup for Islam, when in reality, Islam was the nightmare matchup for Charles. As a result, I don't think his standing in the division would fall as much as Gaethje's did after he fought Charles, because Oliveira's style and repertoire would still give most elite lightweights a loss on their record. He is very durable, has great recovery, and like many have said before, his guard gives most opponents pause to follow him down when he gets dropped. There's still a lot of fighters who are mostly strikers and do not have the level of grappling to hang with Oliveira, so I think that his wins over the likes of Gaethje, Chandler, and Poirier, and the versions of those fighters he faced along with his overall skill set, would put him as the penultimate fighter at 155 pounds. The champion has a name, and his name is Islam Makhachev. I think it's a no-brainer that he has the number 1 spot, as he is not only the champion, but his style has seemingly been proven to work on nearly everybody in the division, after he was able to utterly dominate Charles Oliveira, who possesses some of the most dangerous jiu-jitsu and pressure-forward striking in not only the lightweight division, but the UFC in general. His hip and shoulder pressure would be able to nullify most people's guards and bottom jiu-jitsu game, and his ability to control and isolate limbs does a good job in defending against scrambles that someone like Beneil, Arman, or Gamrot might try to pull off. His defensive footwork, like I was pointing out before the fight, was vastly underrated, and the fact that he is a southpaw with great wrestling and distance management might dissuade some strikers from performing as well as they usually might. Next up, we have Brad Riddell. He's going to be ranked at number 16. Only reason Brad isn't ranked lower is because he beat Drew Dober, and Drew Dober is very, very good, so I'm kind of struggling to put Brad Riddell over Drew Dober right now. I don't know. Yeah, well, whatever. He comes from City Kickboxing and has really good striking, but isn't spectacular at mixing it into his grappling. Has been shown to be outstruck and outdone in the area that he is best, but has a rudimentary ability to take down lesser fighters if things get hairy on the feet. Beating an inactive Magomed Mustafayev and Drew Dober somehow carried him well into the rankings, and as a result, Jalin Turner is officially ranked in the top 10. I mean, the panel of rankings, guys, is just a bunch of people that I don't think watch MMA. It's ridiculous. Big Money Moicano! He's going to take the 11th spot. Now, Renato's absence in the UFC lightweight rankings up to this point, as well as the fact that he didn't fight a ranked opponent in his lightweight debut, instead being given Damir Ismagulov, even though he was ranked in the top 10 at featherweight when he decided to move up, was pretty stupid. He's only lost to Fiziev and RDA at lightweight, with the Fiziev fight being self-explanatory. Fiziev is amazing, and him taking the RDA fight on less than a week's notice, and it was a 5-round co-main event of a pay-per-view. He has shown good striking and leg kicks. You can ask Calvin Kattar, he'll tell you, and good submission abilities. But I do not see him being able to fight at the top of the division against the other guys who can also do it all, but better. He's closer to 35 than 30, and at lightweight, that's pretty rough. And he's taken a lot of damage in his career, especially in that RDA fight. But Big Money Moicano deserves big money fights, so it will be interesting to see what they do with him in the future, coming off of this win against poor Brad Riddell, who seems to be the punching bag of the elite at lightweight. Ultimately, I think Moicano beats pretty much everybody that's going to be ranked below him in this video. When I was making this video at first, I had Arman below Damir because I thought that Arman's scalps were less impressive than Damir's, but I still think the world of Arman's potential, especially after he beat Damir, so that's when I made the switch up here. The guy's going to be a champ, given that he's still very, very young, still improving. He's training at Tiger Muay Thai, working on his striking, which has developed really nicely on top of that wrestling base that he has, and he has given elite opposition some hard fights and losses. He fought Islam on short notice in his debut at, I think, 22 years old, and more than held his own, fought Mateusz and arguably got robbed, and pretty much buzzsawed through everybody else. Davi Ramos is a very decent name to have on your resume given his grappling pedigree. And Arman running through a weight bully like Yoel Alvarez the way he did also deserves a lot of credit. His striking is very crisp and sharp. He has a good eye for openings. He has great kicks. His timing seems pretty well developed. He's, like I said, he's also another guy that's trained at Tiger Muay Thai. And those guys seem to be instilling really good striking philosophies into their fighters. His gas tank has proven kind of suspect. But, to be fair, the paces in striking and the amount of scrambling the two fighters did in his first 5-round fight would have probably drained most of the roster's gas tanks, and it was Arman's first main event, whereas Mateusz had multiple 5-round fights prior to this. Next up is Beneil Dariush, who is at second. Beneil is one of those fighters that you would consider to have been a prototype to the genre of fighters that are just now coming up the rankings. He's always had a great grappling ability, able to both control, submit, and ground and pound, as well as scramble his way out of tough situations. One thing that was constantly holding him back for most of his career was his inability to stick to a game plan and refuse the fun prospect of a chaotic, technical brawl. He's fought down to his level of competition a lot, and his recklessness has caused him to be rocked or KO'd, as seen in his fights with Barboza and Drakkar Klose, for example. Beneil's style has allowed him to beat 3 generations of fighters, those from the old guard like Jim Miller, the generation of his contemporaries like Carlos Diego Ferreira and Tony Ferguson, as well as the generation that's on the come-up in Mateusz Gamrot. I would think of Beneil like a Charles Oliveira with less dynamic striking, and grappling games suited for top control rather than guard. I think he beats the likes of more one-dimensional fighters like Gaethje and Poirier, Bobby Green, and Dan Hooker comfortably, but might struggle against fighters like Fiziev, Tsarukyan, and Damir a lot more, as they're able to be more tricky in setting traps on the stand-up, but have grappling skills or grappling defensive skills to match Beneil's output. Okay, next up, screw Rockhold, screw Costa. This is the most handsome man in the UFC, coming in at 17. Very durable fighter, good, fast, powerful striking, but man, the guy has a glaring weakness in the grappling department. He lost the fight against Brad Riddell largely because of his wrestling deficiency, and is pretty consistent in his performances, but he gets shown that there are levels to this game whenever he does lose. The guy has really good... Sorry, I'm getting lost in his eyes, I swear to God, every strike he absorbs just serves to make him even more handsome. The guy has really good cardio and does a really good job of establishing and maintaining suffocating pressure on his opponents, and is often willing to eat a combination in order to close distance and land his shot. Up next, we got... let's have James... Let's have the two fighters in the James Vick category just fight each other. Claudio Puelles versus Paddy Pimblett, Paddy will pull guard, Claudio will pull guard. Just uneducated haymakers being thrown left and right, chins up in the air. I think this is a good matchup. Loser gets cut. Now that I think about it, winner gets cut too. Alright, well, back to more serious matters. Dustin Poirier. We'll put him in at number 3. Dustin's obvious weakness in his level of jiu-jitsu against highly skilled grapplers, Michael Chandler notwithstanding, has been exposed. His strength of schedule and his overall lightweight career is enough to hold him at this spot. His striking is good enough for him to demolish fighters who may not be able to take him down, but the gap between the Poiriers, Chandlers, Gaethjes, and the Armans, Damirs, Gamrots, and Gurams is fast closing. I believe that the level of defensive grappling we've seen from Dustin would serve to loosen fights against the 4 lightweights that I named a few seconds ago, who can competently strike dynamically with intelligence, as well as impose or attempt to impose their grappling games at a high level. Dustin's offensive wrestling is good enough for him to impose it against fighters whose primary skill sets are striking oriented, but I believe that the monsters lying in the top 10 to 15 range of the UFC rankings are going to dethrone Dustin, as they can strike, switch hit, and out-wrestle the Diamond. Okay, Thiago Moises, we'll put you in at number 13. Thiago is a guy that's like a light version of a lot of the other guys in the division currently ranked above him. He has decent straight punches, but if he's being overwhelmed on the feet, he has used his jiu-jitsu to bail him out. Just look at his fight against Michael Johnson. He's only lost to guys that should have beat him, aside from Yoel Alvarez, who's missed weight prior to their fight. But I think he should beat most of the unranked fighters in the division. And he still has age on his side. The guy's only 27. He has a lot of time to develop his striking tools. And, you know, despite robbing Bobby Green, I think he held up pretty well in that fight as well. And Bobby's a very, very slick boxer with ridiculous head movement and shoulder rolls. So, our first weight bully. We'll put you in at number 12, Yoel. You would think that with Yoel's size and physicality, he would have been able to stop people from controlling him on the ground. But the guy is a very obvious weakness that just gets exploited over and over by guys who have the ability to wrestle. First Damir, now Arman. I mean, it hasn't gotten better. His striking and use of distance has shown promise, but I think his future lies at welterweight. And even there, the division is full of grapplers who are just as big as him. And next up, we have Bobby Green. We'll put him in at number 18. Very obvious inability to defend himself against grapplers of noteworthy caliber, but he has really sound striking offense and is very tricky to hit defensively with that shoulder rolling, hands down style. The punches come up from unpredictable angles and he's deceptively fast. He arguably beat Thiago Moises. If the Fiziev fight was 5 rounds, he might have been able to finish him. And he went on that good little run in 2020, 2021 when he fought like 5 times in a calendar year or whatever it was. But the guy's on the wrong side of 35. I don't see him hanging with the guys at the elite tier of lightweight. And his style against guys that are just persistent and throw more than 2 punches in a combination will get him caught, just like it did against Drew Dober in his most recent fight. Okay, next up we have Michael Chandler. Come on down to number 4. The Bellator transplant has had a pretty up and down UFC career, going 2-3 in his first 5 fights, but I think that his skills and the way he matches up with everyone else justify his placement here. His wrestling is good enough to nullify most others' grappling games. Well, okay, so I'm going to go on a little tangent here, right? I mean, Michael Chandler is just probably the stupidest elite level fighter I've ever seen. I mean, the fight IQ on this guy just disappears as soon as he steps in the cage, you know? So against Charles Oliveira had him in his guard and then had his back, and he still wasn't able to submit him because Michael Chandler stayed somewhat smart in those positions, right? But against Dustin Poirier, he shoots in for this most unnecessarily explosive takedown that loses him the ability to control Dustin as soon as they get on the floor. And what does Dustin do? The man who has 0 wins by rear naked choke, he hands Michael Chandler his first loss by submission. Because he caught him in a transition because Michael Chandler was being freaking stupid, right? Every single one of his UFC losses, Michael Chandler could have won. Round 1 against Charles Oliveira. You badly hurt Charles Oliveira. What do? You jump in his guard where he's the most dangerous and he can tie you up and recover. What should he have done? Let Charles up to his feet. Against Justin Gaethje. Oh my God, I mean the 2000 IQ on display here. In the 3rd round, when Justin seems to be a lot more fatigued, what does Chandler do? He throws freaking hurricane kicks, or whatever the hell those are called, that land like 2 feet to the right of Justin Gaethje, nowhere near his vicinity, and then prances and skips towards him with his hands down like he's on the yellow brick road. I mean, don't get me started on this Dustin Poirier fight, right? He should have easily beat Dustin. Dustin looked like a shell of himself there. Not jabbing, no switch hitting. I mean, the mobility, it looked like Dustin's freaking hip surgery or hip injuries finally caught up to him. I mean, this guy is just so stupid. Michael Chandler, God bless him. He seems like a smart, well-spoken man I enjoy his podcast. But this guy's an idiot. This guy, I mean, it's like that old Face the Pain music is constantly playing in his brain whenever he's fighting. It's ridiculous. All right, rant over. His striking, while limited in tools, is fundamental and dangerous on merit of his insane power. He was able to largely control Oliveira on the ground with heavy hip pressure, and I think that his anatomical structure largely helped him with that. He is a lot more compact than others, so his weight is more concentrated in one area, making his ability to stack the hips of another person's guard pretty elite. His speed, explosiveness, and basic ability to switch hit might be enough to help bail him out against fighters that he's losing against. He's underachieved in my opinion because of his refusal to use his most polished skill, his wrestling, but when all parts are clicking, I believe Chandler has a good chance to become champion in a major organization yet again. Okay, Grant Dawson. We'll put you in at number 19, which is no insult to Grant Dawson because this division is full of killers, but Dawson's among one of the quieter killers too. A lot of submission wins, pretty good awareness in his grappling, but I don't know. He's just he's kind of forgettable, which I don't know if that's his fault or mine for not paying attention, but he has good wins. Jared Gordon is an okay win to have, but Leonardo Santos and Mark Madsen are pretty good wins to have as well. Okay, we'll put Damir at number 9. Alright, up next we have the guy from Kazakhstan that's not Shavkat Rakhmonov. Damir's first fight in the UFC was against a prospect who was pretty solid and undefeated prior to their matchup, but has since retired because of some PED issues, I believe. But ever since, he's fought prospect after prospect who themselves have either beaten or given in solid competition a lot of trouble since then. Beating Yoel Alvarez, Thiago Moises, who has since been ranked, an explosive threat in Rafael Alvarez, and Guram Kutateladze is more impressive than he gets heralded for, mostly because of how dominant, uncompetitive, and slightly boring most of those contests were. Damir has shown that he can do everything, including striking really well and grappling great. Aside from his last fight against Arman, where he was largely controlled, he would scramble well, but he wouldn't have the wherewithal to keep moving and would settle into a position, whereas as soon as the scramble ended, Arman would shoot right back in and keep the grappling exchange going. Damir's understanding of control, range, and ability to capitalize on openings with good timing is going to get him a lot of wins in this division. That jab is really, really ridiculous. I mean, it showed in the Arman fight for a little bit, but it was a beauty to watch in the Guram Kutateladze fight. Training at Tiger Muay Thai from time to time because I think he's boys with Jan through their manager Sayat has done great things for his striking. This also made me realize Tiger Muay Thai is very, very weird in that of the current lightweight ranked cadre, they have 3, maybe even more, but they have 3 people who are closely connected in Damir, Arman, and Fiziev, because Rafael Fiziev coaches there, Arman is regularly there, and so is Damir. So it's a weird little triangle there. Okay, next we have Ataman. Rafael Fiziev will be number 5. Fiziev is one of the more one-dimensional fighters coming up, but his striking is miles above everybody else's, and he might be the most dangerous striker at 155 right now. He seems to have technique, power, speed, timing, but has somewhat struggled with his gas tank, especially in that Bobby Green fight, which would be tough to deal with when facing fighters with serviceable striking and good grappling, where Fiziev might be forced to put out a higher output than when he had to fight RDA in his first 5-rounder. His takedown defense is pretty solid, largely ending up in wall install positions when the initial shot attempt fails or he gets taken down and gets back up, which might be an area of concern against bigger fighters like Arman and Islam if he does eventually end up fighting those guys. Okay, I see a very bald head, which is Guram Kutateladze. We'll put you in at number 10. Okay, this might seem pretty controversial, given his lack of fights in the UFC and him having a 1-1 record, but the man didn't fight anybody that isn't a dangerous prospect or contender in the promotion. Now, his record and strength of schedule prior to the UFC also leave much to be desired, but this spot in the rankings is largely due to the skill set that he has shown in his first 2 fights. The man has a diverse kicking game, good ability to defensively grapple, and relatively good fight IQ, aside from the grounded knee he threw against Damir in his last fight, which arguably lost him it. I mean, his hip dexterity and the striking is ridiculous. The way that he just flicks those kicks up is impressive. Training with Hamza, Gustafsson, Özdemir, I think Latifi, and the others at All-Stars in Sweden probably doesn't hurt his ability to learn and improve in between fights. And I think the man deserves to be ranked more so than fighters like Jalin Turner do in the UFC right now. Another weight bully. Dan Hooker can go in at number 14. Alright, his prior work and performances carry him here, and you might think he should be higher ranked, but I think he's taken a lot of damage in his last few fights, draining himself to featherweight and only winning against Nasrat Haqparast and the shame of the division. You know who you are. He has shown the ability to grapple against guys like Dustin Poirier, who themselves have shown their weaknesses to be wrestling, and he's been taken down and submitted by Islam, but the guy hasn't responded well to forward pressure in his last few fights, and grappling paired with forward pressure is the crux of pretty much half of the lightweights ranked above him. I think the guy is washed and should have been fighting at welterweight instead of first cutting to 145, going to 155, and then going back down to 145 and sacrificing brain cells at featherweight. The guy is absolutely huge. I think him, Jalin Turner, and Yoel Alvarez should have always been fighting at welterweight. And I don't know what they're trying to do down here. Okay, look at this full-time fisherman, part-time fighter. Gregor Gillespie needs to fight, first of all. Second of all, very good wrestler. I think he failed in the Olympic trials because he had to face Jordan Burroughs, arguably the greatest wrestler of all time on the American side. So, you know, still shows the caliber of wrestler that he is. Has a decent jab, insane cardio if you saw his fight with CDF, but the guy needs to fight more often, you know, and I don't know if his pure wrestling is enough to cut it against these other guys anymore. And next we have our last weight bully. Yeah, I don't think this guy should be ranked as high as he is in the lightweight rankings. Being 6'3" at lightweight is a bit much. He bites on feints a lot, doesn't protect his lead foot from kicks and takedowns, and his only real credible win at lightweight is Brad Riddell, who I don't think is as good as everyone thinks he is when it comes to the top echelon of fighters. This guy should definitely be fighting at welterweight, but we've seen what happens to him up there. He doesn't fare too well, so he's kind of resorted to coming down here and trying to bully the little guys around. Being wrestled, being out wrestled by Matt Favola the way that he was does not bode well for your future. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know what he's doing. Like I said in the beginning of the video, I hope you guys enjoy this type of tier list content. I know that it's we're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel here, but it's relatively low effort, and I figured I'd put something out while the UFC is on this hiatus. If you enjoyed this content, please leave a like, comment something down below, just engage with the video, and then subscribe to the channel.